allow you to listen to a wonderful presenter named Walt. He is fantastic. He is passionate about work we're doing with students. And specifically today, we want to touch upon a couple of different aspects within Newsela, specifically our custom collections, our custom content within Newsela, and then our social emotional learning. Again, can't thank you enough for allowing us to join you today. And with that, Walt, if that works, I'll let you introduce yourself and jump in.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Jake. Hi, everyone. My name is Walt Peters. I'm excited to be spending the next 45 minutes to an hour with you, walking you through the ins and outs of Newsela, and particularly talking to you all about custom collections. Since there aren't a ton of folks on the call, maybe if we could just do some quick introductions, that would be really helpful for me. So your name, your role, and if you do have a burning question that you came prepared with that you want to ask, feel free to go ahead and lob it at me, and I'll make sure that we either address it right away or I cover it throughout today's presentation. And I can go ahead and start off here. So my name is Walt Peters. I am our lead of custom services. I always say former educator, but I like to think I'm still an educator. I was a bilingual kindergarten, first and second grade teacher for a number of years in Washington, D.C. public schools before I moved up to, and that's okay. If you don't have audio capabilities, not a problem. Don't stress out. You can chat in your introduction. We will find a way to make sure everyone knows who you are. So I taught at a bilingual kindergarten, first and second grade elementary school in Washington, D.C. I moved up to New York City, where I continued teaching at a boys' charter school out in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. For any of you who are a fan of Spike Lee's movie Do the Right Thing, I think from like 1989. That was a neighborhood that I had the privilege of working in. And then I worked for Pearson for a couple of years, so please don't hold that against me. And then I've been at Newsela now for a couple of years, incubating this idea of custom collections, which I'm going to be speaking more extensively about today. I'm really excited to learn how we can potentially partner together and how we can work together to leverage your instructional expertise, our content expertise, and hopefully unlock the written word for a lot of students. So with that being said, I will pass it over to Julie, and we can just go down the line here, followed by Alyssa Smorford. I'm not sure if that's how you say it. And on down the line.
Steve Morford.
Oh, Steve Morford. I was like, Smorford. I've never met a Smorford before. I also want to apologize in advance. I do have a bit of a cold, so I'm going to try and mute myself when I cough. But if for some reason I don't hit the mute button in time, I do apologize. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here today. I'm Julie Erickson, and I'm a learning specialist at TIE, and this is one of our TIE Tech Tuesdays, and we are so excited to have Newsela as one of our newest member benefits. And so the discount that you guys are providing is exciting to be able to have that be an opportunity. So I'm excited to learn more about Newsela and the opportunities. And then I see Mr. Morford does not have a microphone. He is up in Spearfish, however, though, and he's the principal at Spearfish High School. And then Alyssa has also chatted in, and she says she's a school library technology coordinator at the South Dakota State Library. She started out in K-12 teaching high school ELA, and she's eager to learn more about this offering. Newsela is wonderful. So, and then I think, who are we down to after that? Bobby, will you talk to us?
Hi there. I'm Bobby Kilber. I work with the South Dakota Statewide Title III and Migrant Consortium, and I work with a team of Lindsay. Lindsay is on the call. She's one of my colleagues, and we work for Black Hills Special Services, and we work with almost 100 or more school districts who have English learners and migrant populations.
Thanks, Bobby.
I'm Teresa Burnt. I'm the reading specialist at the state of South Dakota Department of Education. I was a ELA middle school, high school teacher for 20 years. I'm familiar a little bit with this program, so looking forward to learning more so that we can share with teachers across the state opportunities for their districts and for their classrooms.
Thanks, Teresa. Kim.
Kim, it looks like you are muted at the moment. I'm not sure if you have.
No worries.
Hey, Kim.
Don't worry about it. I do see it,
Kim.
and I will forward this to our fiscal.
All right, let's meet Lindsay.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm in my car. I don't know if you could see when I.
That's commitment right there.
You're dedicated.
Yeah, I'm part of the Title III consortium, and I live in Rapid City, so I serve 12 districts West River, and I'm really excited about Newsela as well. Thanks.
Thanks. And Kim is our amazing, she helps with membership and a lot of the coordination that we do with all of our communication for social media. And so I'm glad she's on today because she answers lots of questions about this resource. So if she pops in later, I am recording this session so that we can share it back out for anybody who can't be here, or if you guys need to share it to your colleagues.
And then is that Julie and Bobby?
Oh, we've met Bobby and the other Julie. Right. The other Julie is me on another computer.
Okay, gotcha.
You never do just one webinar on one computer.
Gotcha. All right, great. Well, it's great to meet you all, and I heard no particular burning, pressing questions, but that does not mean that they're not going to come up throughout today's presentation. So please feel free to interrupt me, chat in with your questions, talk in with your questions, and we will address them as they come up. So my agenda today is pretty simple. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give a 5 to 10 minute overview on what is Newsela, right? Like, what are we about? Why are we here? What is it that we're known for? And then I'm going to walk us through 2 specific products that I'm really excited to be able to talk to you about today. One is our custom collections and sort of the steps that we're taking as a company to be able to drive more core instruction. I think one thing that a lot of folks assume when they hear Newsela is that it's just current events for English language arts teachers. That's definitely where we got started, but we have such strong content partnerships and operations that we're really excited to be expanding into the world of core curriculum. And one of the ways that we can support teachers and classrooms is by building custom collections that are aligned to your district's priorities, your district's pacing guides, your scope and sequences, your unit guides, your standards, etc. So I'll be walking you through some of the different collections that we've built for other districts, both in the state of South Dakota and then also across the country. And then I will spend some time talking about our social and emotional learning collection. So this collection includes a lot of content that is aligned with the CASEL competencies for social and emotional learning to really help build those critical, soft, communicative, and developmental skills that we know are absolutely critical for our students to master in order to be engaged, self-efficacious, motivated, and persistent, productive global citizens. So that's my agenda. Please stop me along the way with any questions. I'm a bit of a talker, so if you're feeling like I need to be interrupted, it's probably because I need to be interrupted. Any final questions before we dive in with our introduction to Newsela? All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Can you just confirm, Julie, that you can see my screen? You should see newsela.com.
Looks good.
Fantastic. So Newsela is an instructional content platform, and our mission is very simply put, is to unlock the written word. And we believe that the best way to unlock the written word is by bridging what we call to be the reading engagement gap. So we talk about all sorts of gaps in education all the time. We talk about the opportunity gap, the achievement gap. And so here's another gap that you could jot down, the reading engagement gap. So we have this theory at Newsela that students are falling behind in reading because they don't have access to content that motivates them and to content that, inspires them. Nothing's more humiliating than maybe you're in 8th grade and for circumstances outside of your control, you are reading at a 2nd or 3rd grade reading level, and your teacher comes over and gives you Frog and Toad or Clifford the Big Red Dog. Right? Just because you're reading on a 2nd or 3rd grade reading level doesn't mean that you want to be reading 2nd or 3rd grade level content. And so at Newsela, we are trying to provide students with the content that they love and is delightful by partnering with a multitude of really high quality, reputable, mostly nonfiction content providers. And you can always find a list of our content partners by clicking on the Search Newsela button and going down to the Advanced Search. So don't feel like you need to follow along. I just want to speak for a moment about some of our content providers. I do apologize for my seemingly glacial internet. So like I said before, we partner with a multitude of content providers. And if you look over here on the left side of my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here, you can see some of those providers. So you'll see a wide variety of perspectives, of sources, both geographical and political. You'll see it's also not just current event news. We have partners from biography.com, the California Academy of Sciences, Encyclopedia Britannica, Gail Cengage, the Human Rights Watch, NASA, National Geographic, PBS NewsHour, Pro-Con, so on and so forth. And every single one of our articles comes at 5 different reading levels. And that's really how we are making content accessible and engaging for students. So let's go ahead and hop into this article here. We do have an article covering the recent death of George Bush Sr. And when you access any article on Newsela, sort of our bread and butter is that that article is going to come available at 5 different reading levels, ranging between 2nd and 12th grade. That's right, the same article, but available at 5 different reading levels. So what you'll see here is that we're currently viewing this article at the 9th grade reading level. This article was originally published by the Associated Press and has been adapted by Newsela staff. You and your students are able to access the different versions of, the different versions of this article by clicking here on the Lexile converter. This Lexile converter is what enables you and your students to toggle between the available levels, the max level of an article. This is the article in its original format. It's a carbon copy of whatever was written by that Washington Post journalist, right? We have a very lengthy article here. We've leveled that all the way down, We've leveled that all the way down here to a 3rd grade reading level. So let's take a look now. The text has significantly changed. So we do partner with Metametrics, the creators and owners of Lexile, which is sort of the international standard for text complexity. And we look at 9 different indicators of text complexity to edit and relevel our articles. So things like vocabulary, syntax, sentence count, syllable count, word count, and I can't remember the rest of them, but there are 9 of them. I can only ever remember 5. So that is the real bread and butter here, is that all of these articles are leveled so that students can access and actually read and enjoy content that they care about. In addition to that, every article includes a series of embedded formative assessment features. So every article includes a comprehension quiz. This is a 4-question quiz that's aligned to 2 of the 8 anchor reading standards for nonfiction, as well as a write prompt that students are able to respond to in writing. And then a series of our articles includes a feature called Power Words, which assesses students' understanding of high-frequency Tier 2 vocabulary words by providing them with a couple of formative assessment activities where they get to match the word with the correct contextual usage. This quiz that I just showed you here is what enables Newsela to be an adaptive learning technology. So let me break that down for you. As students read articles on Newsela and take these quizzes, the platform is able to use your students' performance on those quizzes to determine a couple of things about your students as readers. The platform is able to calculate a suggested just right reading level for every student in your class, and also determines their skills proficiency across the 8 anchor reading standards for nonfiction, again, based on their performance on these quiz questions. So not only does the platform unlock reading transparency, it will also begin to auto-differentiate articles for your classrooms. So let me break this down for you. Let's go ahead and create an assignment. When I click Create Assignment, I can title an article, whatever I would like it. So maybe it's Period 1 in Class Reading. I'm going to leave some instructions. Read the article, annotate the article, the article's main ideas, take the quiz, respond to the right prompt. And then I'm going to select a class to assign this to. We do integrate with Google and Canvas and Clever and ClassLink as rostering providers. And now when I click Assign Now, this article is going to appear to my individual students at the reading level closest to their calculated suggested just right reading level. That's right. So if I have students that are reading at the 3rd grade reading level, they're automatically going to receive it at the 3rd grade reading level. If I have other students in the same class that are reading maybe at a 7th grade reading level, they're going to automatically receive the 7th grade version of this article. And over time, as students begin to perform better and better on these comprehension quizzes, the platform will level them up. So ideally, the platform is always targeting students in their zone of proximal development. So I will pause there and see what questions have come to mind about the article and some of the features that I just covered that are available on every single article published in Newsela. What questions are coming to mind? I am assuming, oh, I see one chat here.
I was just wondering, how many articles do you assign before the program can level them?
Fantastic question. The platform begins leveling them immediately. We say it takes between 6 and 10 completed quizzes before that is an accurate level for the platform, between 6 and 10. And we recommend officially assigning at least 2 articles per week to a student. We do have some longitudinal efficacy studies that we've completed that show that students who read 2 articles per week on Newsela achieve 2 times the reading gains compared to their non-Newsela using peers. And students who read on Newsela every school day, 5 times a week, achieved 3 times the reading gains compared to their non-Newsela using peers. And you can learn more about those efficacy results by visiting newsela.com/results.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. What other questions can I answer for folks before we hop into a quick discussion about content, and then I want to jump over and talk about collections.
Do you grade these? I mean, do do you do these for a grade in the grade group, or is it more just a formative assessment?
Strictly formative. The quizzes in particular are intended to do two things. One, fuel the algorithm to determine the level of the student and provide meaningful data to teachers. And secondly, to help inform students and teachers today what they can be working on in 5 minutes from now or tomorrow. If you were to give a grade or use this as a more sort of standard check for understanding, you are always able to review a student's response to the right prompt. And I would encourage teachers to use that more for a qualitative grade or score.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Another feature that I did mention here, but I haven't shown you yet, is the ability that you have to share annotations with students on an article. So if you want to bring students' attention to a particular part of the text, you can select the portion of the text that you want to draw to students' attention, as I've done here. And what you'll notice is that automatically an annotation box appears in the margin of the screen. As a teacher, you're able to select the color that you would like to highlight that text in, and you can write a message to your students. So maybe that's a question, maybe it's a scaffold, maybe it's a definition, maybe it's an exemplar annotation, etc. And when you click share, that annotation is now visible to all of the students who access that article when you send it to them as an assignment. One really interesting statistic that I like to share is that students are 6 times more likely to mark up and annotate a text when the teacher has done it first. So this is a great way to slow students down, to get them to more formatively interact with the text, and also get reinforced annotation practice and skills with them. So the other piece here that I wanted to talk about is the breadth of content that Newsela has. Newsela partners, again, with over 50 nonfiction content providers. And we've had to think really strategically about the ways to categorize and group our content. So we have 2 big buckets of content. One is our library section. And this includes nonfiction genres such as primary sources, biographies, famous speeches. We have a whole careers section. We have myths and legends. And we do publish about 20% of our article content into Spanish. We also are very well known for our news and current event content. And this is categorized into those common news categories that you can find here. My favorite section is the opinion section. It's great for talking about bias or argumentative writing or for hosting classroom debates. And to date, we have published over 8,000 articles. Again, all of them come at 5 different reading levels and cover a wide variety of topics, particularly across the humanities, including English language arts, social studies, and science. When you search for article content, you can obviously search by keyword. And you can even filter those articles by the reading skill that you want them to assess and the grade level that they come available at. We want to make sure it's really easy for teachers and for students to find the content that is most interesting and engaging for them. So I want to switch gears here in just a second, and I want to talk to you about custom collections, which is sort of the future, the direction that Newsela is hoping to go, to be able to provide more core instructional resources and content to really drive classroom instruction. But before I do that, are there any questions sort of about the high-level overview of Newsela that I just gave? All right, we'll keep moving forward here. We're cooking with gas, as my mother says. So custom collections, this is something that I'm very, very passionate about. And I think that it's proving to be a game changer for instruction and the way in which districts can partner with an ed tech company like Newsela. So let's take a quick walk down history lane together here. Back in the day, which really wasn't that long ago, there were these things called textbooks. And there's a lot of great things about textbooks, and I think that they get a really bad rap. So I want to go ahead and I want to call out some of the great things about textbooks. Textbooks have a lot of content. They are created by experts. They have vocabulary lists. They have suggested assessment, like, cornerstone experiences or project-based learning suggestions. They have glossaries. They're pretty organized, right? Like it was really great when I was in middle school and high school. I could bring my textbook home, and when I was studying for a test, I knew exactly where to go to prepare for my exams or do my homework or whatever it was that I needed to do. I knew exactly where to go. That being said, there are some not so great things about textbooks. Does anyone want to share a complaint about textbooks that they have? I know someone has to have one. But yeah, go ahead.
Hey, this is Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hey, they're static.
They are static. You're exactly right. They are dated kind of the second they come off of the printing text or printing press. Alyssa says they're heavy. I know I associate my terrible posture with all the textbooks I had to have in my backpack. Exactly right. Yeah, they're not always relevant. They don't always have multiple perspectives.
They limit teachers.
Oftentimes they're limiting for teachers. You're exactly right. Teachers are still having to go out and find other resources. I heard the other day, a couple months ago actually, that textbooks typically cover between 60 to 70% of the content that is required to be taught throughout the course of instruction. 30 to 40% of resources having to be curated and sourced by a teacher, that's a lot of work. Another study shows that teachers spend between 7 and 12 hours just finding resources for their planning and instruction every single week. That doesn't include planning. That just includes finding the content. So, textbooks aren't perfect. The other thing about textbooks is that it's a bit of a one-size-fits-all situation, right? A publisher in New York, I used to work for them. I used to work for Pearson. They create an off-the-shelf cookie-cutter publisher's curriculum. They sell it to thousands of districts. And we know that the reality is that the needs of one district, of one student population, of one geography is very different than the needs of another. They might even be neighboring districts, but you might have very different needs. So along came, we're still on this history lesson here. I promise I'm getting somewhere. So along came the internet, right? And with the internet came just a floodwaters of ed tech products, right? And this was really exciting because all of a sudden you didn't need a printing press to be able to get your hands on resources. And so districts just started picking up tons of different ed tech products. I remember I was in the classroom in like 2010, 2011, working with DC public schools, and I was just getting lobbed ed tech resources like left and right. And they're sort of just like whatever sticks, right? And I quickly found myself having to navigate and manage like 15 or 20 different programs. And they were all really fantastic, but I kind of got to the point where I was like, oh my gosh, I kind of just missed the textbook, because at least with the textbook, there was just one resource I needed to get really good at understanding and mastering and leveraging to inform my planning and inform my instruction. So then at Newsela 2 years ago, we had a really, really simple idea. We were like, what if we could solve a lot of problems by partnering individually with districts, leveraging their instructional expertise, with our content expertise, bringing those together to create a custom bespoke resource that mirrored and reflected all of the district's instructional expectations and gave teachers everything they needed to facilitate an entire course of study. And out of that concept was born custom collections. Very simply put, a custom collection is designed to support a year's worth of instruction for a particular grade level and content area. So think 7th grade social studies, that would be one custom collection. 8th grade English language arts, that's another custom collection. And what we're able to do is we're able to leverage our content partnerships, go out and custom source, custom curate, custom differentiate article content, and package it in a way that is fully aligned with your unit guides and your instructional expertise. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of this. Before we hop in, are there any sort of high-level questions? Have I lost anyone? Is anyone like, I don't understand what he's saying? I do love some webinar silence. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and hop in. I'm going to show you a couple of examples here. So collections live here in the collections drop-down menu of your Newsela, what we call masthead. And so if your district had a custom collection, excuse me, it would appear in this drop-down menu. And I'm going to start by showing you something that we built for a district in Massachusetts called Revere. So I'm going to click into this collection. Again, I apologize that my internet is so slow today. All right, so for Revere, Revere is a district in Massachusetts, and they came to us and they said, our state has just adopted new social studies standards. We are now having to teach civics in 8th grade, and we have no resources for it, particularly none that are aligned to the new state standards. Can you help us? And so what we're currently doing with Revere is we built out 2 units of study, one called A Free Press, News and Media Literacy, and one on the institutions of U.S. government. So think of this page that I'm showing you as sort of the table of contents, if you will, in a textbook. And each of these is a chapter in your textbook that will drive an entire unit of study. Now, what you'll notice is that when we went to build this collection, we went right to the updated 8th grade social studies standards provided by the state of Massachusetts. So everything that you're going to be looking at today, all of the instructional requirements came from both the district and then also this new social studies framework document that was adopted by the state this past summer. Remember, so this is entirely custom, built around their needs. So when I hop into a unit, think of this as like the first page of a textbook chapter. We typically provide an overview of the content that has been custom sourced for this particular unit, as well as the essential question that we want students to be able to answer upon this unit of study. In this case, it's how does a free press support a democratic government? And again, that essential question and all of the topics that we sourced content for come explicitly from those standards that I was just showing you on that Word document. Everything that you're looking at is visible to both teachers and to students. Now, we know that it's critical to be able to provide teachers with instructional content that will help them bring article content to life in their classrooms. And so we created this resources panel here on the right side of the screen. This is only visible to teachers, and this is where all of that instructional content lives. So here we have a recommended instructional pathway. We include the unit standards, right? What are the standards that this unit was built around? all of those sort of instructional components that a teacher needs to leverage in order to plan for instruction. Again, I apologize for this cough. We then broke down this particular unit into 3 topics. We're going to talk about the history of freedom of the press in the United States and its constitutional protection. We will talk about news and different types of news. And then we have this current connection on tackling fake news or not. Right? So within each of these topics are a series of instructional sets. These instructional sets are designed to support 1 to 3 days worth of instruction, and it's sort of a ready-made, ready-to-use lesson, if you will, that teachers can fire off with the click of a button. So here in this first section of the unit, we're talking about the freedom of the press. We're looking at what is the freedom of the press, why is the free press essential to democracy, and throughout this topic, we're going to be diving into the First Amendment. We actually have the First Amendment and other primary sources curated as a part of this instructional set. We'll then hop into comparing and contrasting the United States with other institutions and nation states that don't have protection of a free press. We'll then take a look at the role of press throughout time and the relationship between the US political environment and the press. And then we'll also talk about some of the limitations of the press, right? Like what is libel, what is slander? When I click into any of these instructional sets, this is where the article content lives. So in this case, we have an article about the value of the free press and how journalists in China are required to be loyal to the dominant political party. And then for teachers, we provide an actual suggested instructional activity that comes with a before, during, and after reading activity. So we want to be able to provide teachers with suggested ways to help bring this article content to life for students. And then we also include the standards that we use to develop that particular activity. So teachers always know the standards that they are targeting when they are creating assignments with these collection instructional sets. The last thing I want to show you here is that we often include in our custom collections a cornerstone activity. So this is intended to be a project-based learning summative assessment where students are able to comprehensively demonstrate mastery of the concepts taught throughout a particular unit of study in some real world or applicable way. So in this case, what we're going to have students do is select a research and public policy issue that's related to, and then they're going to need to, write an objective news article and an editorial cartoon or commentary. And then they're going to present their work to an authentic audience, right? So they've learned about news. They've learned about the different types of news. They've learned about the role that news can play in advancing a particular cause. And now we're going to provide students with a bunch of different hot topic issues, everything from immigration to climate change to endangered species to video games. And we've curated articles that students can read that they can use to research and then ultimately draft some type of editorial or news artifact to present to some authentic audience as a way to demonstrate that they understand not only the types of news, but the role that it can play in society. So I just talked for a while. Again, I am showing you one example of a unit that was built for another district. Obviously, this was a social studies unit, but I would love to get any thoughts, questions, concerns, feedback on what I just walked you through before I show you one or two more examples. I'll give folks another 5 seconds or so. Don't want to cut anyone off from thinking. All right, I will take silence as you are good to go. One thing I did want to share is that we have partnered with a district in South Dakota. We partnered with Todd County, and they had a particular request. They use making meaning for their sixth grade, or for their middle school, English language arts curriculum. And making meaning, as you may know, is comprised of a series of anchor texts. And what they noticed is that students were struggling with they had some content knowledge, background knowledge gaps that were making it difficult them to be able to always fully understand or relate to the anchor texts in each unit. And so what we did at Newsela is we created a curriculum alignment collection to their making meaning scope and sequence. So I can just show you really quickly what that actually looks like here. All right, again, I apologize that this is taking a little bit longer than I would like. So when I click into their custom alignment, what you'll notice here is that we have a unit for every one of their units as outlined in making meaning. So the reading community fiction obviously is the title here of the first unit. Using text features is the title of the second unit. When I click into any of these units, what we've done is we've built out instructional sets for every one of those anchor texts that are used in that particular unit. So let's think about The Power of Advertising by Elizabeth Romm is the name of that first text, and then Extreme Sports is the other one, which is what we built out here. What we did at Newsela is we went out and we custom curated between 3 and 4 articles, and for every one of, and aligned them, to the book titles, right? So when we're talking about advertising, we wanted to provide students with articles that related to the themes and the topics that were present in that particular anchor text, right? So here's how propaganda works. Here's some controversy related to Super Bowl advertisements. Here's an article on sort of the segmentation of advertising and how different ethnic groups or minority groups might receive different advertising than other groups, and sort of the sociocultural implications of advertising. And so we curated content around the background knowledge that the district wants to be able to provide to students, and ultimately curated it so that students would be able to answer these essential questions, which were also provided to us by the district. In what ways is advertising helpful or harmful? And what is propaganda and how does it relate to advertising? So not only are students going to now be able to read this anchor text, let's think about the power of advertising, with more of the background knowledge and more confidence, they're also going to be able to make those fiction to nonfiction connections. And so that's what we did for every single one of the units taught. Teachers have that custom curated article content that they can use to align with and reinforce the anchor texts for that unit. All right, so I will pause here again, and then I'm going to hop in. I'm going to close out today by talking about our social and emotional learning collection, but would love to see if there are any questions about what you have seen so far. We do build custom collections for social studies, English language arts, and science, and we are, again, really committed to providing you all with enough instructional resources to support an entire year's worth of content. As I mentioned before, textbooks typically cover between 60 and 70% of the content that a teacher would need to comprehensively teach a course of study. The largest content gap that we have encountered at Newsela is a 7% content gap. We're able to just be so much more precise with our sourcing that we really can meet so much more of the needs of teachers. Any questions before I hop into talking about social and emotional learning? All right, I'm assuming you guys are still awake. I am so actually maybe if you're falling asleep, you're welcome. I lulled you to sleep on this lovely. It's kind of dreary here in California, so maybe you're supposed to go on that. All right, so closing out here by talking about social and emotional learning, we have created, excuse me, 3 social and emotional learning collections, one for elementary schools, one for high schools, and one for middle schools. I'm going to walk you all through our middle school collection here. And our social and emotional learning collections are sort of pre-built. They're ready to be purchased today. However, know that we are also able to customize these collections if you want them resequenced, reformatted. You want to dictate the types of instructional activities. Know that just because it's ready to use today doesn't mean it can't be adjusted and customized for you tomorrow. So as you know, social and emotional learning is an incredibly important and growing field of instruction that has been found to be incredibly important for preparing students to be gainfully employed, happy, productive, not only in school, but beyond. We've also seen that schools that invest in social and emotional learning programs see an 11-to-1 return on that investment. So for every $1 spent on a social and emotional learning program, society reaps the benefit of $11 on that $1 investment. So there's a lot of cost savings there. There's all these studies that show a direct correlation between social and emotional learning programs and a reduction in your likelihood of going to prison, or an increased likelihood of pursuing postgraduate degree credentials, of making more money, right? So there's all these benefits that studies and science have proven behind the explicit instruction of social and emotional learning. And so to support schools in implementing these programs, we have created a social and emotional learning collection aligned with the CASEL framework. So CASEL has identified 5 core competencies: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship building, and responsible decision-making. And we have built out 5 what we call units, 1 for each of those 5 competencies. So our goal here is to provide a really flexible resource that teachers and students can use to facilitate conversations or to teach into particular skills that students may be demonstrating and need to hone, craft, or develop. So for example, when I click into self-awareness, you will see that there are, excuse me, a lot of instructional content for students. And we've broken down self-awareness into the subcomponents that are required in order to be self-aware. Right? You need to be mindful. You need to be aware of your emotions. You need to have an understanding of your own identity or self-conceptualization. You need to be able to pinpoint and identify your confidence and your strengths and what you're able to provide to and contribute to societies. Just like in those custom collections, we have a bank of resources for teachers, including social and emotional learning vocabulary, at-home resources, recommended culminating experiences, professional development connections, etc. And then within each of these topics here, we have articles that are associated with that particular topic, right? So if we want to talk about emotions, students are going to be able to build an understanding of common emotions in order to name, understand, and communicate their states of mind and feelings. And so what we've done is we've curated a lot of high interest, engaging, relevant content that serve both as explainers of, how emotions and stress affect body language, and then really engaging human interest stories that provide real world connections for how understanding emotions is played out all around us, right? So, the National Football League cracks down on excessive celebrations. What are the negative and positive effects of excessive social media? So on and so forth. And so the goal here is that as a teacher, you can find the article content that you need to be able to facilitate a conversation or to teach into one of these competencies. And so with that, I will pause again and see what questions are coming to mind. We are in the home stretch here, about 9 minutes left on this Newsela sponsored Tech Tuesday. That sort of wraps up my agenda for today, but would like to turn it over to you guys to ask any questions that might be coming to mind. Oh, I see we have some that have written in here. Oh, I apologize. I thought we were wrapping up at 4:30, but we can absolutely wrap up now. That's totally fine as well. If there are no additional questions, we can certainly go ahead and wrap up now. If you do have follow-up questions, definitely reach out to Jake. We're really, really excited to be able to learn more about some of the needs at your individual districts, just like we did with Todd County, just like we did with Revere, just like we've done with DC Public Schools, Broward County, and countless other districts across the nation. Districts are really excited to be able to find a partner that treats them like the instructional experts that they are and that you are. And so we're excited to, if you're looking to adopt new social studies resources, English language arts resources, science resources, please consider Newsela as an option. We'd love to have a conversation, learn about your needs, and ultimately learn from your expertise to build something that really leverages your best practices and provides teachers with something that they can lean on to drive that core instruction. Jake, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Walt. That was absolutely fantastic. That was a mouthful. I appreciate you jumping in despite being sick. Definitely a trooper. So thank you.
I do apologize. Thankfully, germs aren't transmittable through fiber optic networks, hopefully. So I do apologize.
If I come down with a cough tomorrow, I'm going to be frustrated. Again, if there are questions, definitely reach out. We are very excited. This is a pretty neat work, and it's fun to be able to partner with districts in this capacity. Julie, thanks so much to you and to Ty for facilitating this. Anything else on your end?
I did share the resources that take you to the Ty page with all the information and the contact information to get a hold of Newsela. We'll be sharing out the archive to everybody who signed up, and along with that link there too. And that's about it. So thanks everybody for checking in tonight.
Have a wonderful evening.